As we look into finding our authentic selves, living our best life, or staying grounded and mindful, we're creating a conscious and deliberate path forward. This requires effort, willpower, determination, and focus. What if we could eliminate the effort? What if we could transpire a situation by an energetic connection to its integrity and beauty? And what if the power of intention was open to transformation when we let go and connected with universal energy? For some, this journey seems unbelievable, or some would call it the woo-woo stuff. That's what energy healers do. And when we look at the power and science of intention, it is so much deeper than a wishful thought. It's not a linear journey, but a curiosity to face the unknown and then to be empowered by its possibility. With this opportunity to surrender and to be vulnerable, we find the nuggets of true possibility and our ability to find the highest potential within. My guest today strives to find the jewel in her connections. As a publisher and a writer, Krystal Hille inspires thousands with her attention to intuitive writing, vulnerable moments, moments of reflection, and then writing from a place of wonder that can transpire the writer's life, but also the reader who journeys along the road too. And as an entrepreneur since 2008 and a publisher since 2021, Krystal is owner of Hill House Publishing. She's an international speaker, a best-selling author, and she's a soul leader mentor. As we listen to her story of transformation today and how that is now an inspiration for others, consider your story. Consider your ability to share your story. And we hope we inspire you to compassionately share and help others through your story. You're listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell. This is sponsored by the Cape Breton Tea Company and Dance Debut Inc. And I'm very pleased to welcome Krystal Hille. Welcome, Krystal.
Thank you so much for having me. What a wonderful introduction.
Thank you. Well, you make it possible. You know, as I was commenting before we hit the record button, just when I go to sit down to write these pieces up, the energy of the person I am lucky enough to work with always comes through. And so the eloquence of the words, you know, are a part of the inspiration that you send. So I so appreciate that. All right. So let's dive in with a affirmation card so we can get started. This comes from my Affirmation for the Body and Biofield deck. And I'm just going to hold up the cover. So for those people that are listening to the podcast, it is a black cover. It has a picture of, it's an abstract piece, but it's a ribbon of color. And Tanya Levy, who put this piece together, calls it mother and child. So it's how we nurture each other, how we support each other. And I've chosen the card from Meeting the Divine. And this card, it comes up many times, actually. This is a common one I'm very familiar with, which has to do with the right hand and the 11th chakra. So for those people who are listening again, you can see a hand, which is not an abstract picture, which is many of our cards, but you actually see the hand, but it's reaching towards the sun. But there's this beautiful globe, which has many facets or sides to it. And it actually counts to 12. So, which is a really interesting piece, and it's in gray and white. And the affirmation that goes with it is safe to offer my gifts to the world. Every cell in my body awakens and rejoices with love. And it's the 11th chakra, and it's the right hand. Right hand is the opportunity to let go. So this gets us on our discussion for today, Krystal, letting go with that hand and seeing what can happen.
Yeah. So for me, when I saw the card, it's actually the offering up. You know, we're offering something up, and you know, I think we can offer up the things that we need to let go of that no longer serve us, so that we can bring in that really unique essence that we hold. And also on the flip side, for me, when I saw it initially, I was like, we're offering our wisdom, we're offering ourselves up to the universe, and we're being met by this beautiful light. So it's as if just to encourage us to say, well, if you're sharing yourself authentically, if you're willing to be open and the word contribution as well, one of our core needs is the need to contribute that which we have learned to make a meaningful contribution to society. And if we do that with an open heart, we're met with this beautiful light and everything becomes better for it.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. It's lovely to be able to bring in the two facets of that thought, because some people really do hold back on their story, thinking it's not valuable, and then not realizing by holding back what they keep from other people, which is really interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
I can see you and I are going to dive in fast. Do you want to share, as we try to engage, we've set the intention for how we want to move forward. So let's put it in flow by adding our tea today. So what tea have you added today?
I have green jasmine tea today because it's 7:00 in the morning here and I still need that little bit of a kick, but it's also got the sweetness to it.
Mm-hmm. And what's the mug that you chose?
The mug is my big mug. It's like, it's pretty, I like the color. It's like, it really does. You can see how big it is. I love big mugs. It's just the one I always use.
Yeah, and nice and easy to hold. What I've noticed with many of the people on the podcast is they choose something that they can almost hug. That's what they're doing with their hands.
Yes, I have one of those hugger mugs as well. They have this round shape, but today I'm just going for the one that I usually would have.
Yep. And I've got today, to represent the Cape Breton Tea Company, I have Queen Mary. And this is an organic creamed Earl Grey. And it has a gentleness. So where black teas often have a little bit of bitterness, this has a very soft without adding any milk. So I like it because I don't have to worry about putting the dairy inside of it. But I was thinking about our stories and I was thinking about gentleness and persuasion. So I thought, okay, what will I choose for my mug today, which would typically be a mug. But I decided I would get my great-grandmother's gold teacup this time. And so Queen Mary is in this gold teacup. And I know for us in Canada here, we're celebrating Memorial Day and Queen Victoria's influence. So I guess I've got a little bit of royalty happening. So here's my gold teapot. And it's always fun just to bring this out and remind me of my great-grandmother. So cheers to you. Thank you very much for being on the podcast with me, Krystal.
Cheers.
Okay. So with that, let's begin our journey of discovery and let's go into the personal opportunity of transformation. And this is where we have the opportunity to look at the kinds of things that you chose to do in your life, different kinds of education. And then at the point where you said, I need to do something different. And then how that moved you into the healing work that you do. And then, of course, we'll move forward to your publishing company. But let's start with your education and some of your background.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Germany as the daughter of a church minister, which immediately brings you into some kind of, stereotype of who you are, and as the good girl and potentially the people pleaser, which definitely were traits that accompanied my journey together with what I call the silent rebel, because I, inside of myself, always questioned things and always questioned the status quo. But I was, through my conditioning, not one of the loud ones. I was like the introverted rebel, so to speak. After school, I went to England, and in my gap year, I actually did the foundation year of the Steiner education, or world of education, as you call it in American Canada. Just to figure out, well, what do I want to do? I've always known I'm here to help people. But when I was 18, I thought, well, maybe that's the only way I know how to do that is through studying psychology. But that didn't really resonate with my more creative being. I was always very curious about why do people do what they do and what makes them tick. And so I loved literature, and I was the editor of my school magazine, and really just exploring human conditioning through literature. So I then found myself studying English literature and theatre studies in the UK. And after a kind of exchange with the US, and spending a summer in New York, living a really bohemian life, and saying, I've always really listened to the universe and like been guided by that and guided by my inner voice. So I've not, in that sense, when it comes to my profession, I've always followed the inner calling, not so much in my relationships where I married for safety. So in terms of, I wasn't ready to be single. I wasn't ready to let him go, but I knew it wasn't 100% the right thing. I stayed in it. And I'm sure many can relate that we sometimes do things for safety, even if it might be staying in a job. But then the universe catches up with us. That's what I believe. We get signs, and until it gets so loud that we know we have to leave. And so that was for me after a really beautiful career in theatre, working with the Royal Shakespeare Company and Opera North, and touring Europe with certain companies and doing my own shows, a lot of that just suddenly, in my case, the universe communicated by taking all of that away from me. To say, well, you can't distract yourself with your career. You actually have to focus on what is right here, right now in your relationship. And that's when I really listened and tuned in and said, okay, I actually have to leave. I wasn't ready, but it was almost like the universe forced me. And I think that's one of the first transformations that I call the coronation of my inner queen. Until then I was the damsel in distress in many respects. I was still a girl in a 20-year-old body. But then with that divorce, it's like, okay, now I'm the queen of my own life and I need to make it work. And I kept listening to the synchronicities because the theatre work didn't come back. I gave myself a year to rebuild and it didn't. So I was asking again, where am I meant to be? What am I meant to be doing? And lots of synchronicities, and a literal dream later, I end up in Australia in 2006. And yeah, it was fascinating. Like when we listen, the universe talks to us, and it talks to each of us differently based on our reference points. That's what I found. So when I came to Australia, I didn't want to rebuild my career in theatre. It didn't resonate. And then I wrote myself into clarity. This is where the writing piece comes in again. And I did the Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which is a beautiful book for artists to overcome the inner critic and step into deeper self-love. And one of the exercises in it is to write every morning 3 A4 pages, handwritten, for 3 months. And so that was in itself a powerful transformational journey, because when we're writing, and the power of writing really helps us to get clear on all the stuff. I was going to say rubbish, but all of the thoughts, the negative thoughts, but also the inspirations that are actually in our head. And I remember one of my mentors was telling me, a business mentor, your mind is not meant to be a storage device. Your mind is there to allow things to flow through. So we need to store our thoughts somewhere else, not in our mind, because that just creates overwhelm. Mm-hmm. And so through that writing, it's literally like a verbal diarrhea. It's a clearing out the channel, which can become so blocked when we just hold everything. And so in the beginning, I really noticed there was a lot of reflecting on my life in a kind of all the things that are wrong. But later on, I started asking more powerful questions. And there's a saying in coaching that our life is determined by the questions we ask, not on the answers necessarily that we receive. Mm-hmm. But the quality of questions determines the quality of our life.
Wow.
And so I started, I started asking better questions after I had gotten rid of some of the junk that was kind of sticking around in my head. And at the end of it, I wrote myself into clarity, and then life coaching showed up in 2008. So then I thought, that's how I'm meant to help people. I was just in training during my 20s because I needed to gain my own life experience before I could hold space for others. And so the theme or the through line really was that even in the theatre work, I empowered people. I empowered the actors to give their best performance, because I could really see their essence and meld that or bring that together, combine that with the characters, so that they were uniquely themselves, but also in the guise or in the costume of the character. And then, of course, with life coaching, helping, my clients to live their best life, changing their story, going through that transformative process of really becoming aware. And I think that's what it is. It's the awareness that helps us to transform, and then I added, became a Tantra teacher, added that into the mix. I've been practicing privately, but I really realized that a lot of the women in particular I was working with were quite disembodied. They were checking out, their soul was checking out, and when things were traumatizing or not safe. And so how can we manifest our lives when we're not in our body? We can't. And so I felt, well, if we can help activate the life force energy in the body and bring awareness back to the body, then we can command our reality a lot more easily or better. So I did that, and I ran workshops pre-COVID, and then all of that shut down because that had become my main thing, facilitating these beautiful workshops, speaking in festivals. And then I also simultaneously went through my second divorce from the father of my children, and I didn't want coaching. I just didn't have the energy to hold space for anybody other than myself and my kids. And in that moment, again, the universe dropped publishing into my sphere, so to speak. In 2020, I was in 2 multi-author books, and it really resonated. And when the lady said, "I'm teaching people how to do this," my whole body just said yes. And initially, I was wondering, how is that helping me empower people? But now I realize, this is exactly the perfect next step. So that brings us to now, having done this for 2 and a bit years and worked with over 150 authors.
And that's a lot of authors in 2 years' time.
Yes.
When you said that number to me before, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
Can you be influential one-on-one coaching, and can you be influential in group settings? And then to think that's how many authors, can pass through your hands and your guidance. That's huge influence. Yeah.
And I'm currently working with 45 in 3 different multi-author books.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's great fun.
I want to go back
because you did say one thing that kind of tweaked, and it was asking yourself the right questions. And I'm thinking about those people. Someone said the other day, and she's a counselor, and she guides people on lots of things, but she said the questions she asks herself are of today, like right today, what she has to do. And so for her, when we were in another discussion about down the road, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, and she goes, no, I just have my today plan. But I was just thinking about what you said about asking those questions, because you can ask simply the questions of today, but it's a lot more difficult to ask the questions of 1 year time, 2 years time. Where do you want to be? Do you want to just chat maybe a little bit more about some of your reflections on that?
So I like to know where I'm going. I like to dream, and I like to have my goals, and I have them written down. And I think it's the stress around those goals, if we want to call them, or intentions or desires, comes in when we attach to those outcomes. But when we can just put them out there, surrender them to the universe, and just hold the feeling of those, what that will give us, the feeling of that in our right now, in the today. Today I want to feel free and joyful and relaxed and have inner peace, because that's what I see the future self being. And then I bring that future self into the present moment, into the now. But I also know that there's somewhere that I still want to journey to. So that's how I deal with the present and the future.
Beautiful. And then I was, just as you were saying that, I was thinking about your transformation, because 2 divorces, there's a lot of transitioning work with 1 to take that first step, and then 2, what that means from the other side. As you look back now and you see the gifts that came out of your courage to take those steps.
What do you feel inside about having taken that step? And
I know I
say courage to you.
I'm sure there's lots of
Emotions that come up.
Yeah, look, I think it definitely takes courage to trust and to listen to the inner guidance. And I feel that when, there's this pleasure pain principle where we say our human condition is that we do more to avoid pain than we do to fulfill pleasure. And so when the pain of the current situation or environment becomes so strong, we get propelled into changing and transforming. And it's almost like in my life, was it courageous? Yeah, but I always felt like it was the only choice I had if I wanted to continue expanding and being my authentic self and striving towards becoming the best version that I can be. And for me, that is just, that constant evolution of being in my highest essence is just non-negotiable in my life. And so when I come to those thresholds of making a decision and I ask a question, will this move me forward into who I am, or will this kill me inside of myself? And if the answer is it's going to kill me, then it's almost, for me, I was like, I have no choice. This is just what the next step, the next obvious step. Does it take courage? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as your children have observed
what you're doing, what
transformed for the relationship you have with your kids around what they've observed of you?
I think Tara always says, my mummy runs a business. My mummy is an entrepreneur. I think that she quite likes that. I think in my son, he wants to become an entrepreneur. And this is him being a free thinker as well. I've actually taking him out of school, and we're just in the process of filling out the application for homeschooling, because he doesn't see the point of doing homework and spending 7-8 hours. He's 12. He's just turned into year 7, and they're just getting this homework. Is that, Mum, that he doesn't see the point? It's like, well, it's taking me away from the things I really want to learn and that I really want to do, which is he wants to do composing and music. And so he said, I'm a bit behind with my homework, but I just don't want to do it. He can't see the point. So I think what it inspires them to do is, just to follow their heart and to do what's right for them. And he'll still get his education. He'll probably have running a business, making his own money by the time he's 17.
Exactly.
And you'll be able to
channel those pieces through the education that he does need, which is always interesting.
Exactly. So that's what I'm going to encourage him with, and putting him in contact with a beautiful mentor who does that, who specializes on teaching how can I learn through my passion the things that maybe I don't want to learn so much. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that thinking skill, I think, will then set him up for life in a way that he can think independently, and he can it's framing, isn't it? And for all of us, like, how can we bring joy to the things that we don't like doing? I guess it's the overarching of, if we want to universalize it and make it relevant for everyone. Mm-hmm. How can I bring joy into washing up? How can I bring joy into doing my emails? How can I bring joy to the things that I really don't want to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And then that is the entrepreneurial journey too, is to find that joy, because we're all doing that piece that we feel is so important for us as entrepreneurs. But yep, it's sometimes you have that fleeting 10% to work on what you really wanted to, but then you have all the other stuff that makes it possible, which you hadn't anticipated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about writing yourself into clarity. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that's something that you inspired in me in our conversations that we've had, and really what happens in that writing process. And I'd love for you to share that with everyone.
So I've already shared how I wrote myself into clarity with my career, but what happens in the containers with the multi-author books is that So when we take the time to reflect on our journey and then leading it into why do I do what I do, and really asking, I always ask a question, it's like borrowing from Dr. John DiMartini, who says our voids create our values. When we look at our life from that perspective, and what were the voids that I had in my life that I now, the opposite of which is now very important to me. So for me, it was the disempowerment. And I didn't share that story, but I'm not going to go into, but there was something that happened in my childhood that really disempowered me and took all trust away from me. And you can see how trust has played a role in the decisions that I've made and, moving continents and careers and doing all sorts of things. But so our voids create our values. That which we perceive as absent is that which we really strive for to achieve. And so when I give this principle to the writers and they reflect on their journey, often what they realize is, firstly, one could be, wow, I didn't realize how far I've come. I've never taken the time to honor and acknowledge myself. And so that then creates a transformation of stepping into greater confidence and that greater clarity gives that greater confidence, which then helps them to show up differently in the world, show up differently to potential clients, attract more people because they also are now able to articulate themselves more clearly. And the other transformation that happens is that when people write, suddenly pockets of shame may pop up, or pockets of unresolved trauma where they say, wow, I thought I dealt with that. But there's still tears around it. And so often the writing process then brings out those tears and brings that to the surface. And then it just pops, it releases. Because when we put it on paper, there's this powerful thing of transmitting it again out of our mind, out of our head, out of our being, onto the page, externalizing it so we can gain a little bit more distance from it and see it perhaps more objectively. So it helps in that way. And one beautiful thing I never forget, one of my authors was saying is like, I've now shared my story and I feel I no longer need to carry it. It's now, I've released it back into the universe. It is now the universal, the global story, that everyone's story. And I thought that was really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So for those people that maybe aren't familiar with the compilation books, typically there's a theme around the book, and then authors come together to share their aspects or ideas around what that theme is. And the writing is to fulfill, for some cases, it's a page. Sometimes it's a couple pages. Maybe it's a chapter. But it's usually about the theme that the book is around, and they make their contribution based on their education, background, experience. But what you're describing is not that. Your description is that you come with an idea, but there's this transformative process that happens within the time they spend with you. And like you said, that person was able to let go of that story and move on. And for those people that maybe have told their story many, many times, and they're just reiterating it again to put into a book, it no longer becomes that. And do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know we talked about what is your secret sauce? How do you get this inspiration coming forward? And I think this is just so vital for people to understand. They have a potential with you that's so different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. Because of my background as a life coach and, spiritual teacher, meditation teacher, what I bring into this. So we still have the theme of a book. But then we look at the story, the life story of the author, and we look at their expertise, and we simply share their story through the lens of a particular theme. So, for example, the current one that's in progress is Beyond Certainty, finding courage to embrace the unknown. So it's a theme that somebody can really easily relate to, pick stories from their life so that the readers can learn who they are, and then they can position themselves in their expert status so that potential clients can come into their world. So the theme of the book just holds the personal story. And I think what I'm bringing to the authors is this ability to see them. I can see people, and I encourage them to go deep into their story, not to stay surface, but to go really deep, because the deeper we go, the more permission do we give the reader to also reflect deeply on their own story. And it's not just, we're not just sharing the story. And this is the other thing, you know, you see a lot of these multi-author books where there's people just sharing their story, and it's like one big blah, here's my story. And then I say, so what? Why? You know, great, that sounds amazing. You had a really terrible childhood, or you had, wow, you know, your transformation is amazing. But then where does that leave the reader? So then once, and it is the first draft, everyone needs to get their story out in this way, because that's the personal transformation. That's the personal, I'm writing for myself. And that's the first step. And it's a very important step. And then the next step is that we flip the lens of, now let's look at it from the reader's perspective. What themes, what wisdom, what tools can you tease out of your story? Can you highlight so that the reader can actually have a transformation as well? So we're telling a story in order to make a teaching point. And therefore it becomes transformational for the reader, which I'm excited about, because ultimately I'm here, you know, my mission at Hill House Publishing is to awaken and empower humanity into deeper sovereignty and connection. So the story aspect will show, wow, if they can do it, so can I. And then the teaching aspect will show them how.
That just lends right back to
The same idea with the podcast for me is about
what is it that inspires people to actually make the change? Because so many people can just stay where they are, keep doing what they're doing. They can be happy, they can be fulfilled, they can have all the things that were on their bucket list. But what is it that makes them go, I want to do something different, or I want to follow that dream that's been back in the background for so long, and I've just never gone there. And then all of a sudden, that spark that says, this is the time. And so that's what I'm hoping with the podcast, those kinds of transformational stories come out. And just listening to, you know, how you took your journey, and it's not a straight journey. It's a weaving journey, and it has its ups and downs, and it has its glory days, and it has its time when you really have to dig deep and push through. But on the other side of that, how many people now that you're inspiring to look at their story. So for us listening to this podcast and listening to what you're saying, that gratitude we have that you've taken that initiative to bring yourself to this place, to bring yourself to a publishing company that can do this kind of work. It's truly amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, our lives are like the river. It moves, you know, it goes around bends, but it always goes back to the ocean, whatever the ocean represents for each one of us.
Yeah.
And it's that question to ask, you know, what is inspiring me? How can I live my life more fully? So that even when, you know, that, yeah, for me, that's the question that moves me forward. And how can I contribute? You know, that growth and contribution are, again, core values that we all have in some way. Once our basic needs are taken care of, we can then look at, how can I contribute? How can I grow even further?
And there's that little piece. How can I grow even further? So we just think, you know, we got to this place and it's like, I'm so happy with where I've achieved to here. And then, is that it? You know, do you want more? What's on the other side of that next door? What's that next vision going to pull you towards? Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. So you've got a couple compilations on the go. If I was someone who's listening thinking, maybe my story has the opportunity to transform, how do people get involved in a project with you?
So you can simply reach out to me on, you know, social media or through the website. Let's have a conversation. We'll see what would serve you the most, because I think for me, that's always very important. I don't want to just get people into a book. I want to see, okay, what is in it for you? What will this give you? How will that transform and expand you? So I've actually got a couple of books happening. I won't mention them because, you know, this is an evergreen podcast, but there's always opportunities that we have, not just for compilation books, but also for writing your own book as well.
And that's a nice piece too, because we do have the stories where somebody does want to take the whole book, whole book to that. And what kind of writing are you doing currently for yourself? I'm curious now, through all that you have done by writing, where are you going?
So I have a solo book in the making. It's called Authorship Unleashed. And I've created these 4 author archetypes, having worked with so many people. I have created 4 author archetypes that I will share in the book. There's also an author archetype quiz that I've created, which we can put in the show notes as well, for people to find out, because I feel like it's important that we play to our strengths, that we know what they are. Because so often there's people saying, yeah, I have an amazing story to share, but I'm not a writer. So we all have an inner writer within us, and sometimes he's just a little bit dormant. And I do have some tools to reawaken that. And the author archetypes certainly help that. So I'm in the process of putting all of that into a book.
Beautiful. And we are post-pandemic. So have you the opportunity to do some in-person work? Are you doing most of it online?
So at the moment, most of it is online. I do have my long-term vision is to take writing retreats to sacred places around the globe. And see how that energy can deepen us into our own essence and our own journey. But at the moment, everything is online.
Beautiful. Well, even just when you said to sacred places, and I'm thinking, oh, I can see people coming along just to find out, where are you heading? What are you doing?
Yes. Those will become amazing, because there won't just be writing retreats. There'll be the whole thing, or the whole transformation.
Exactly. Oh, beautiful. Okay, can you share a little bit how people can find you? So we've got that right at their fingertips.
Yeah, so my website is krystalhille.org, KrystalHille.org. And that's also where you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook is where I'm most active.
Perfect. That's great. So to finish off today, I usually have some kind of a movement activity to offer people. They've been sitting listening to the podcast, and maybe they were busy doing something while they were listening, but now let's do something that really will put that activation towards transformation. What do you like to do movement-wise?
I love to, sometimes it depends on what mood I'm in and what the intention is of the movement. But if there's something I need to let go of, I literally just love shaking. Starting with the arm, with the hands, just shaking it all out, and then starting, bringing the knees in and the whole, until the whole body is in there. And it's like inspired by the Kundalini shake. There's Osho has a whole meditation, a shaking meditation, and there's retreats in Bali. I know that where people just shake things out of the body. So I like doing that to just get the stagnant energy out of or whatever else needs to be released.
That's interesting as you said that, because I was thinking about what I wanted to offer in movement, and it actually lends itself that if you spend that time doing that shaking and opening and getting the chi really flowing through, then what I wanted to offer today is a 5-sense awareness walk, and taking a walk that includes each of the senses. So once you've awakened all that, and then you have that chi flowing through, the senses do really get heightened. So that lends itself. So anybody listening who would like to give this a try, you'll be able to take what you've offered and what I'm going to offer here and put it together. And I think it'd be pretty powerful. And then I would recommend people go sit down and do a little bit of writing and see how, having listened to the podcast and the energy that we created, what might come out of the writing that might not have been there before. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say a little bit about the 5-sense awareness walk, and I'm going to read my notes because I want to make sure I'm clear on the instructions of this. For anybody that decides they want to go do it, you'll be able to re-listen to this part of the recording. So if you can walk barefoot, which would be lovely to be able to put your feet on the earth and maybe into the grass, or in my labyrinth, I can walk on herbs. As you take your first few steps, be aware of your feet, and then be aware of the joints.
and then your posture and your head position. And as you open up your sense of smell, notice what comes in. Breathe into the smells and then see if they grow in awareness. And then listen to the sounds of nature around you and within, and then see what you hear. And then start to notice if there's some kind of a chorus that comes in. Maybe there's something that's more of an isolated sound. And then as you continue, what do you taste as you're walking? Then you can move to your sense of touch. How does the ground feel? What do your hands notice? Maybe your skin? And I'm going to say the biofield. So how does it feel on the outside of the body? Because a lot of times we listen to the inside, but what does the outside have to say? And how far away can you notice that sense of touch? Sometimes when the chi is really flowing, you can notice it a half a foot or a foot above the body. So it can be quite a ways from the body. And for those who feel the expansion of energy of the space around the body, you might be able to draw a lot of awareness about your surroundings and then get a sense of touch or vibration that's coming from the area that you're in. And then you can add what you see. Notice the colors, the hues, the full picture, maybe the details. And then how does the addition of sight change all the other senses? And then if you come back to your walk, how has your walk changed? Do you have the same feeling in your joints? Same noticing of the neck, the alignment of the body? And then what do you notice about your feet? And now that you've completed a 5 senses walk, what do you notice about your life? And how can you bring in some of those key pieces? And with all of the lovely things that you've shared, Krystal, the opportunity to be able to go and write will be beautiful at this point. Yeah. And just so people know, the 5 senses awareness walk was something that, as I sat down to work on this script and tuned into Krystal's energy, that's what came out. And I'm so excited to actually go to my labyrinth now that we're in spring and I can do that, to be able to walk the labyrinth and bring in all those senses. So I appreciate what you inspired for me.
That's so beautiful. And what I love in you sharing this walk is that we become so aware. You know, there's that word again that's sort of been coming through this podcast. We become so aware of who we are and how we're feeling in that moment. And from that awareness, there might be new things that come out, as you said, in terms of the writing that would have otherwise stayed locked away. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for sharing that too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My pleasure. Krystal, it was lovely to chat with you today, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom, and I wish you the very best as you move forward, the books that are on the roster at the moment, but also what's coming up for you in the future. I wish you the best with that.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Season 3, we're devoted to the transformational process that happens when people reach into their authentic selves and create magic. Our season has several different focuses within the month, and we hope that they inspire and empower you to consider living your true heart's desire with the love and compassion for others at the forefront. Thank you for joining us. This is Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, wishing you well-being.